Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the officially unofficial Fargo podcast for the Fargo television show. I'm your host, Aaron, and joining me tonight is...
You can call me Ron.
The man named Ron.
Mr. D.
Ron Dawson. Now...
It's so good, man.
I first of all, thank you very much for, on short notice, filling in for Jim. I want to tell people a little bit how we know each other. A couple years back, I started as a spinoff, a little like an independent political podcast where Jim is producing, and it's called Three Right Turns. And Ron reached out and said that he wanted to talk, and he had this really interesting metaphor for racial understanding as seen through the lens of the Star Trek The Next Generation episode Darmok. And I'm like, son of a bitch, yes. I'm having this guy on and we're talking. And I've been on a couple of his podcasts. You're doing Dungeons and Durags over at... I mean, you tell people about your project, Ron. I'm a big fan of Ron.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that project was, I think, Darmok and Jalad at White Privilege was the name of it.
Yes.
All life lessons can come from Star Trek The Next Generation. But yeah, so that was the first time we connected. And then I started a little podcast called Dungeons and Durags. It was named after my book, which was a story. It was a comical satire. You probably can't tell by my voice, but I'm a black man. And it was about my reconnecting with the black community and sort of the evolution of my blackness. And in the book, Sam Jackson, as a guardian angel, comes to help me be blacker. So that's kind of like what the book is about. So I started a podcast where me and my two best friends who are both black, who always tease me about not being black enough, did this podcast called Dungeons and Durags. And I had you on for a few episodes. The first episode was this Squids, Crabs, and Barrels, oh my episode.
That's the one where you got to discover the crab bucket metaphor.
Right, yeah, where I, as a black man, learned about crabs in a bucket, crabs in a barrel. But it was also the recap of the Squid Game episode. We had you on for that. And then I had you participate in a black television trivia contest where you were the only white guy. I won't tell people how it turned out, but it was a surprise. So I had you on for that. And then a couple episodes later, my Happy Birthday White Jesus episode about Christmas and my evolution of my Christian faith. And I had you on to kind of talk about your own personal journey. So if some good episodes in there.
I know most of people, like old school Bible fans, know, but I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness, not celebrating Christmas. So there's a little bit of synergy there talking. I got a lot. Yeah. I got a lot in common with Ron, other than the melanin. Yeah. In terms of our kind of like our walk through life and whatnot.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm excited to have you on because you are current on Fargo. You're excited to talk about this season of Fargo.
I got some thoughts.
Well, let's start off with how are you feeling about this season as a whole, and then talk about how you felt about the episode 8 blanket from this season.
Yeah. I would say I'm feeling better about this season than you and Jim seem to be feeling.
All right.
There seems to be a common theme with your guests. I'm digging the scene. Juno Tempo is knocking it out of the park in terms of acting. Definitely some nominations coming her way if they haven't already come down. Just really, I mean, she's come a long way since Ted Lasso. It's hard to understand her accent on that show. And she has a new one on this one. So, but all the acting across the board. John Hamm, I think whenever he doesn't play a suave comedian type, like, I think this is the first, like, I don't think I've seen him in a movie or a TV show where he's a straight out villain. and I think he's doing great. Everyone's doing great on this. Jennifer Jason Leigh, I feel like she had a part of her kind of reminds me of her Huttoxy proxy her accent
for sure
in a little sense. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I've been enjoying the show. And this episode, I thought last episode Linda was like amazing. I thought this episode was solid. We're gonna get into it. There's some things I'm worried about. I'm worried about one particular thing.
Interesting.
One thing in particular we'll get into.
Because I'm here to say that I actually like this episode. I thought this was a very satisfying episode to watch.
Yes.
Right up until it turned into a gut punch. There's been some people saying that there hasn't been enough impactful death in this episode in this season of Fargo, and I think with Danish Graves getting put into a North Dakota Bismarck grave, the stakes have definitely jumped up. And I know, it's interesting because I think the only other out and out villainous role I've seen John Hamm in is Baby Driver. He played the kind of the psychotic hitman in that. But
I forgot about that. Yeah,
he was still very slick. Kind of this is a much more brutal, like that walk he does. It's like a 2-minute walk, almost a one shot.
Yeah.
And the menace that he's able to convey with his body language, with the intensity of his walk, with the emotional turmoil that he's working himself to take all that out on poor Dorothy.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah,
it's
man.
tough. He's a great villain. Great villain.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is indeed. So yeah, I thought this was a solid episode.
Let me ask you this. This is something that a listener wanted us to talk about, and I'm rarely lost when people ask me on my opinion on things, but this brought me up short.
I don't know what the title means, if that's your question.
Yes, that was the question. What the hell does blanket mean?
I have no idea. And I even listened to Joanna Robinson, seems to be really up in these things. She didn't even know.
Really?
Yeah. So I feel good about the fact that she didn't even know. So the fact that she didn't know, I think it's fair to say that there's no real meaning to it. The closest thing I could think of was towards the end. She kept hiding stuff under the blanket. That's the closest thing I got.
I was thinking like a blanket of snow, because maybe there's some fresh snow falling. But it's I'm reaching.
Yeah, there's that.
I'm reaching.
Yeah. So sorry, listener.
Well, let's get into we'll catch up with feedback at the end of the episode. Let's get right into the action. We start off the episode with Danish up to something as he represents 3 North Dakota citizens wanting to all legally change their name to the same new name, which will be a mystery for now, but it's going to pay off handsomely in a few scenes.
Yes, it does.
I really like the Poor People Store song.
Yes,
it's like that's like the 70s version of Macklemore's thrift shop, right?
Right. I thought that was good. Another cool little tidbit I did some research and found. Apparently, the names of the debtors in the book are like crew members from the show, like from the production.
They
crew
got a
members
dude
from
with
the
the last
show.
name of Sasquatch.
Apparently,
because I was trying to think of it looked like he was going for white guys with brown hair, brown eyes that were around 6 foot tall. And I was thinking the other commonalities, maybe they have weird names. Like you got John Sasquatch, you got a guy whose name's Blue, not Blue, like Blue's Clues, like BLEW, like the past tense of blown. Or Blue. Wilbur, I don't know. What is Blue? Blue, yeah, you blew it. Apparently we've got some the crew members. We've got some crew members need some name changes.
Yeah. I don't know of every single name in there, but that's some of the research I found. So I thought that was interesting. Yeah. At the time, where were you guessing? Did you guess ahead of time, at least in that scene, what they were changing it to?
I had no. I wish if I'd have thought for a second, I probably would, reflected on the trailer and the fact that I think we even mentioned in the preview how he's like there's this like joke that like most of the sheriffs that he's debating with are all looking like him, and I thought that maybe that was some kind of like they're all trying to out Roy, but no, I did not see it coming until it happened.
Yeah. Once it happened, it was a good payoff for sure.
Yeah, I like how the law clerk, or not the law clerk, but the records clerk or whatever, she's kind of like thinks about it for a minute, like this is some weird, but you know what? Hell, it's America. Stamp, like
that's right.
You got your $25. You got your $25 filing fee. Come on, let's get the other guy.
That's right. I'm sure she's seen weirder things being in a Fargo universe. True.
So we left Dorothy at the hospital after she had that freak semi/SUV accident, and there at the same hospital, Roy is trying to strong arm her into signing out a medical release so he can get her back on the ranch before our old friend who has not shown up for a while, State Trooper Whit Farr, shows up.
My boy Lamore. It's so funny he walked in because I was thinking, where has the brother been?
Yeah,
he has been missing for a number of episodes. And I thought it was cool that he comes back on the episode where I get to talk to you about it. So it's like, my boy's back.
Yeah, one of the big heroic figures of this season, with along with Indira and Dorothy herself. It's funny because like I just noticed the rumblings in the subreddit. People are like, it's been a while since the Wit showed up, and I wonder where happened to Wit. And it's always interesting when a character's submarine like that in Fargo. Right. They got some other dance to play in the plot.
Yeah. How are you feeling about him questioning Dot at the time? Like, do you feel like he wasn't picking up on clues, or he was picking up on clues, but was it making you nervous that he was kind of like pressing the situation?
I'm always worried that people are going to die. So, yeah, I was kind of, especially when, there's that scene where it's like, you could tell he's like, okay, there's an even match. I got the sheriff and it's me. If I can get Dorothy to just say, help me directly, I can make a move here. And then you see in the background, Gator and all of his boys rolling through the double doors. And then it's like, you can feel, even before he does, that window shut. And I was just worried that someone's going to get themselves killed, because it's clear to me that Roy's becoming increasingly unhinged. Like, I think he understands that the door for his opportunities here are closing rapidly. He's in way over his head. There's no, he's like Jerry Lundegaard from the first Fargo movie. He's 17 Buicks deep on a bad garage real estate deal or parking lot real estate deal, and there's no way out, and he's acting unhinged. But yeah, I was worried, and I do. There's a couple things that I don't quite know about like how his hands were tied. Like, I think the second that Gator puts a bullet through his windshield, like, I think that's. I think you just drive up to your state troop outpost and be like, "Look what the sheriff's deputy did to my fucking patrol car." And he said my head was next. Are my hands tied here? Yes. I think the answer would be no, but I don't know.
Yes. His hands weren't tied with that. His hands were tied specifically with the Dot situation because of the fact that she said that she was okay. I think that's the situation he was talking about.
Yeah. It gets complicated when you get in that jurisdiction crap.
I know.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was. I feel like Wit in the long run, the way he was kind of standoffish probably kept him alive, because if he had, because this comes up later, if he had tried to do what Danish did, he probably would have been in that grave too, eventually.
Yeah. And the thing is he's street smart enough to know the actual danger, whereas I think Danish Graves thinks that he's got the money, he's got the connections, he's got the power, that there's no way I'm going to walk into some guy's house and they're going to murder me. Like, it just never, where it's like, I think, Trooper Farr is in a world where, that can happen,
Right. One of the things that also occurred to me in this scene, you really get an idea of the breadth of Roy's power and influence. Like, he knows the woman behind the counter. He knows that her brother had some prison issues. you feel like he has a grip around a lot of the people in his county. And you could see the look in her eye when he was threatening her about that.
And that's the other interesting thing is that, like, I think you could maybe be fooled into believing that maybe Roy benevolently rules, for all outside appearances, his county. But here it seems like there's a real element of fear. Like that nurse working the discharge desk saw what was going on. She sees this person needs help and she is concerned and she doesn't think Roy's a good guy because Roy's not even trying. He's like,
you're right.
Snap. You don't snap on a nurse like that. That's
right.
But he's like, he doesn't have any time for niceties. Give a shit. She and her alarm bells are ringing, but he goes right to the threat. He's like, hey Kim, how's your family doing? How's that brother? And it seems that Roy has, maybe even increasingly, I don't know how his granddad did and his dad did, but Roy is kind of tyrannical over Stark County, it seems like.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And that's a good point. I mean, his family probably has a history of being like this. People know about the Tillmans up until you get to the Gator.
Yeah.
All the Roys prior to that have been an issue.
Well, we found out they skipped the name a generation because it's he Gattaca'd him. You remember that detail where the dad and Gattaca is when what's the kid's name?
The actor?
Yeah, it's
Ethan Hawke.
Yeah, it's like what Ethan Hawke's dad does to him in Gattaca. It's like, I'm gonna save my name for the good baby. This is the trash baby. Gator's the trash baby.
Right.
I love the detail of, and I noticed this in the first Fargo movie, the North Dakota, any of the Dakota troopers, sheriffs, their parkas have like little slits right where the gun belt is, so they can get. Because you got to wear these big, heavy parkas, but you got to have your sidearm. And Officer Witt's got his like holster going right through that little portal as he's about to draw down on Gator.
Oh, I didn't notice that. That is a good eye.
I love our cozy gun accommodating Dakota parkas on our law enforcement officers up there.
Yeah. Yeah. You gotta love how Gator comes out the gate calling Witt Jay-Z.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the only black person he knows,
He knows probably.
And so then Witt there's a little coded this scene where he calls up his new buddy Indira and says, guess what, I just saw Dorothy and she looks like someone out of a hostage video, like a trapped animal, all compliant outwardly but inwardly you can tell she's screaming. And now Indira's on the case. Another interesting detail, just kind of tying the season together, is Indira talking about what she's doing, like she's evicting elderly people right before the winter in Minnesota. It's like, and she doesn't even think it's right, so she's definitely got one foot out this job and towards Lorraine Lyon security detail.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, well, next scene, Roy has Nadine, as he calls Dorothy, right where he wants her in one of his outbuildings, chained to the floor, apparently completely at his mercy. It's a tough scene.
Yeah, it is a tough scene. I mean, this is what she's feared the whole season, right? And maybe we'll talk about this later, but one of the huge differences that we see in this episode from Dorothy, this is the first episode where we see true fear in her eyes. I mean, we don't really see it towards the end, but we get a sense of the dire situation that she's in. Because the whole time she's been an animal. Like, she's been a tiger, as our old friend Munch likes to call her. And we can see, you have that sense of despair that comes later on in the episode. But yeah, this first scene where she's tied up, and it's got to be devastating in a sense, because for 10 years she's been avoiding this dude, and now she's chained up. The only people that she knows about her is Witt, and she told him, don't come get me.
Yeah, and I think she's so, we talk about her being a tiger, but she's so fierce where she's just like, let me out, let me out, let me out. She's trying to pull that, chain right out of the ground. And the way she just handles him verbally, he comes at her with all this stuff, and she's like, "You broke your vow. You broke my bones. What plan do you got?
Right.
God's plan." Starts quoting Drake. You're never in a good position if you're resorting to that. And and she talks about this isn't just me. If you take me out of this life, you're screwing over my daughter. You're screwing over the library board, the Girl Scouts. I have made a life for myself in this community. And of course, that just makes.
What did you think about her
angrier.
trying to appeal to his? Yeah, what did you think about her trying to appeal to his human side there?
I'm not sure, because the only thing I can think of is it's an interesting appeal, because we saw from the nurse instance, we talk about how he kind of maybe cruelly runs this county, like the difference between his community and everything's based on fear versus the community she's trying to build, which is based on respect and mutual support and people helping each other out. But I don't know. Maybe she was just trying to talk him, to provoke him, to try to get an angle. You think that she doesn't want him to attack her, but it almost seems like in a Brazilian jiu-jitsu kind of way she does. You come in here and you kneel on my bed and touch my chains, I'm gonna make like Princess Leia and Jabba the Hutt she needs him in close so she can if he stays his distance, then the tiger can't do anything because it's chained. So I kind of felt like
for sure
she's kind of like a push-pull, maybe trying to make an appeal to come on, what are you doing? What is your plan? Think, slow down and think. What is your plan after you abduct me? What is your plan after you kill? And he's like a bull seeing red.
Is this the scene? Remind me. Is this the scene where Lauren or Karen, the wife, comes in towards the end?
Yes, she comes in with a shit bucket, a gallon of water, and trailing the ranch hands who have a cot, and not as sympathetic to the woman's plight as you might think.
Yeah. So I was getting some heavy Handmaid's Tale vibes in this scene. First of all, she talked about the piety. I feel like Roy has this twisted version of Old Testament biblical thinking where he not only believes in the vows, but in a lot of people I don't know how many people know this, but in Old Testament Bible times, a man owned his wife. You literally owned your wife. She was your property. And you can have multiple wives. And a lot of detail that a lot of people don't know is that adultery in the Old Testament was only if a married woman cheated on her husband. A husband can have as many multiple wives or concubines as whatever. And this is totally the mindset, that Roy has. He has multiple wives, and he's, I don't know if trained is the right word, but he has break. Karen.
He'd break them.
Break
them. Yeah. The Karen's broken. She is like a horse with a bit in its mouth. It's gotten used to it,
Yeah, and being the senior wife, she's like the main wife who's kind of jealous of the affection that the husband has for the handmaid, in a sense.
Yeah.
And the way she slaps him. And so I was getting those vibes very strong in this scene.
That you have, people upholding this a system of oppression that disadvantages them because they have a privileged position inside of it, as the wife of Roy. It's really interesting. It's really interesting work. And also, I wonder if they're giving us some hints about, we know that Dorothy in her mind has substituted her own version of reality on certain things. And I wonder if they're trying to teach us with Karen's reaction to Dorothy, maybe how Dorothy and Linda's relationship went. Like Dorothy has reconned it, and I'm not saying I got no evidence in this. I'm just wondering if they're trying to tell us a parallel structure that that maybe Dorothy was, I wouldn't say complicit because she was so young and she's like all brainwashed by Roy, but maybe to try to avoid Roy's wrath and the beatings that Linda was getting, maybe she kind of joined in on the persecution of Linda. Maybe she even helped somehow in the murder or disposal of her body. Because that's the thing I was trying to think. This whole thing is like, why doesn't she just go to the cops? Why does she have to do all this stuff? Why does she have to hide all these things that happen to her? And it's got to be because at some level she's afraid that something is going to come back and on her and threaten her existing life.
Yeah. So one, I don't think that's Dorothy. I don't think she ever was complicit in the harm to be done to anyone else. I think we've seen that in terms of how she cares about people. She didn't want, in that first scene in the hospital, she didn't want people to be hurt. I think to the extent that she's afraid of the law, we know, it's been implied that she was a runaway when Linda first found her. So whatever her life was prior to being found, it's probably something that makes her concerned. But we also know that this was the one person that he never broke, so she never would have participated in. That's the good,
because I was kidding all other counters about like, well, you're when you're a caged animal and it's a flight or flight, and that's been the whole theme. That's like, I don't want to construe anybody to be blaming for Dorothy for anything that happened.
Sure.
It's all Roy's doing, but just like, I don't think Karen was when she was born on this world. I don't think she, as a little girl, be like, I hope I get to grow up to slap other women, like other sister wives that I've got. That's like, sometimes you just get put into these things, and it's a crazy system, and crazy things happen. But that's the best. That's the best. Sure. That's a good counter, because Roy said he never broke her, and
he never broke her.
Yeah, that's a good one. I do think she feels some kind of guilt over maybe it's abandoning. Like she thought that. Yes. She should have gone back for Gator, or she should have taken Gator with her, or something. But I think you're right. It's not because she actually had a hand in Linda's death.
Yeah, for sure.
Moving on, Indira comes home to find her husband Lars in bed with his quote unquote physical therapist in the closet. What'd you think of this scene?
I don't know why Indira never left this SOB in the first place.
Dude.
I mean, come on. The whole time I was like, I don't know if it was 2 or 3 episodes ago where he did that.
I want a wife.
I want a wife.
Yeah.
I want a wife. And, when you think about the history of that particular essay, it was originally written by some woman in the early 20th century, I think. And Indira kind of recites it herself now to him, when she says, I want a wife. But once he gave that whole speech, the fact that she still stayed with him was really frustrating me. That's one thing that's like, here's a woman, she's attractive. Empirically, she is attractive.
Sure.
And she's a police officer, so, she probably can handle herself. This guy is a loser. I don't know why she stays with him. It doesn't make sense, but I'm glad she finally came to her senses.
Yeah, it took it's one of those things where, I don't know, maybe she's the type that like can't leave a person. Like you have to like really give them cause, Well, you have to do something this blatant or this crazy. I think that's one of the weaknesses I think of this season is they did not give me.
I agree.
There was no hook there. Like usually when you got a man or woman in that situation where they're just like hopelessly devoted to a complete disaster like that, there's some kind of hook. That they've set
There's
in
something
deep,
that
some kind of like
believe. Totally.
Yeah, like some self-esteem issue that they've worked on, or some kind of like a bit.
Right.
But this guy is just like, yeah, man, he's a cup of vanilla pudding, not pulling his weight.
Absolutely.
And what I thought was such a power move that Indira's like, fuck it, I'm getting dressed in front of you guys. I got no respect.
Yeah.
I'm treating you like the pets. Like you don't get your dog out of the door if you're going to change clothes. It's like you guys just don't. And she just did it. It was such a power move. Everyone's just equally naked. Like, yeah, I'm not going to be the only one fully clothed in this crazy situation.
Right, exactly. Where was Scotty in this, because it's
so she got dropped off at grandma's last episode.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so she
right.
she got
That's
spared that sight. I tell you what,
right.
this other woman, if she stays with Lars after this display, this is a woman walking into a situation with her eyes wide open, because Indira laid it down like, you don't pick up your filthy drawers, you don't hold a job. Yeah. You don't
He's
do
a loser.
shit.
He's absolute. He doesn't do absolute. But I was also wondering,
shovel the walk. They live in Minnesota.
Can't
This
do
mother,
anything.
he's out of work and he doesn't shovel the walk. Come on.
He's so bad. I was wondering though, if like this other woman really likes Lars, or is it just a fling type of thing?
Who knows?
And we don't really know. They don't really know. But it's hard to believe. It's hard to believe anyone would fall for this guy.
I was about to say, does anyone like Lars? You know, if we're really being real, Ron, does anyone?
Right.
And then cherry on top, her car gets repoed at the very end of the scene. This woman, man.
I think that was the straw that brought the camel back for her.
Yeah, she's gonna go work for Mama Lion now. So just two scenes. There, kind of one minor scene that kind of is a prelude to the major one. Dot managed to disassemble the cot to reveal a mechanism that I think is like a reclining mechanism, and it makes a very vicious looking serrated knife. Before we get to Roy showing up to the big sheriff's debate, where all those name changes we talked about 30 minutes ago come into play.
Right.
Yeah.
Which one? So what scene are we talking about?
The one where she's, like I said, is just a quick scene of her getting the kind of serrated, vicious looking knife out, and then just like, I mean, that's that.
And then it cuts him.
And then the whole Roy thing, the whole Roy at the debate.
Well, the thing about her, so I think she uses like the paperclip or whatever she stole from the hospital.
Yes,
because
the
at the
paperwork.
hospital, we see her take something from the hospital. And what I loved about this whole episode is you see Dot non-stop working for her freedom.
Yes.
Like, she literally does not take a break. If she writes "help me" on the piece of paper, that doesn't work. She tries to take a pen, he finds it, he takes that out. In a split second, I mean, you could miss it if you blink. She steals something like a paper clip that she thinks or realizes she could use later. As soon as he's gone, she's trying to take apart her bed. And she gets this piece and she's going to like, I am just going to saw this chain off. And she has to know it's going to take a fuck long time to get that thing off. But she's like, I got to start now. It reminds me, going back to Star Trek, it reminds me of that the episode Q, the first episode in which we meet Q. No, it's the first episode where we meet the Borg. And Guinan says, I start heading back now when they're thrown out to quadrant D, the D quadrant, whatever, where the Borg is, the Delta quadrant. And Guinan says, what do you know about this space? And she's like, if I were you, I start heading back now. Get the fuck out now. And that's totally how Dot is. She's like, she's starting now to start getting out.
Best time to
no matter
escape
how long
was yesterday. Second best time right now. Yeah.
Exactly. I love that about this episode.
Everything is an attempt to escape. And like the at the hospital to write and help me on the paperwork, trying to steal a pin, and Roy gets like half of it. But like the other stuff, he's got too much stuff going on, you know? He got the pin, he missed the paperclip, and here it's paying off.
Yeah.
What'd you think about this debate? The Danish Graves maneuver.
So was that dude on the far left, was he the real additional candidate?
I'm guessing he was the Democrat of this county that gets about 17% of the vote every year, and you know he's the captured opposition because he looks like he's having a ball. Like he's got the biggest smile of his face when Roy walks down that line of Roy's. Yeah, he's having a good old time. Like fuck you, Roy. He's probably ran against him 7 elections in a row, and he's loses everyone.
The scene was hilarious as they are, they're basically duplicating everything he's doing, which I thought was hilarious. They're obviously trained or taught to do that. And if you think about it, this was like, I felt like one of them, the debt that was next to their name was like, it was either 37,000 or 374,000.
It was 300. Everything was a 6-digit debt, I noticed.
Yeah. So if I'm assuming, I could be wrong, but I'm assuming they're getting either that debt forgiven or maybe a big chunk logged off in order to do this.
Sure.
That's how big a deal. One, that's how big a deal it is to Danish to get this done. But also, I have a feeling those numbers are so small to them, like 300,000 here is like pocket change. It's nothing to kind of throw this election for them.
Yeah, they're talking about billions. That the lion industry is like worth billions of dollars. So yeah, that's literally like us giving 35 cents. You know, you can do it on a lark. You can do it on a lark. Imagine how much fun petty revenge would be if you're a billionaire. You could spike buy a house for $1 million, and it's like, you know, you spending $20 to fuck over your. Yeah, I mean it must be be high comedy to be that rich.
Right.
I really liked that even when you get to... I did have some questions, honestly, in like... mechanically, how would this work? How would Danish get these people registered? How would they get to debate? How, like, would the debate people who obviously have to be... Behold, this is all Stark County. They have to be all Roy cronies. How did this... How did they walk in this ambush? But if I put all that aside, because this is kind of a silly season if you try to nuts and bolts it too much... It's kind of interesting how the debate went, because this lady went right after. What's funny is, like, we know from last episode it was $1 million worth of tactical gear that he gave to his militia's dad, and she says $500,000, and Roy says, well, I think that number's not right. He's right. It's wrong in the other direction. So it's like, it's kind of interesting.
In the wrong direction.
Yeah, this like post-truth debate stuff that they're doing. But it's really funny.
Why do you think he's spending so much on tactical gear and everything?
So he's arming his father-in-law's army, but to what end? I don't know. Like they seem like they're getting ready for the coming storm. You know, this is set pre-COVID. You know, post-Trump, pre-COVID.
Right.
Which is an interesting way to position this. This is happening right before, like, another month or two in this world. Our world, we'll learn about COVID. But it's a funny scene. I really liked when Roy throws the podium down and the other Roys throw it down too. And it's just like this just goes to just completely defangs and emasculates Roy in front, and like when the audience starts laughing, you can tell this is just killing him.
Now, when he clocked that woman, I was half expecting him to be in chains or something, taken in. But I guess he has so much power, he can just do
sheriff. He can I guess do that. So that's the other. It's like if I on subsequent watches, I was wondering, would this? I'm trying to think of like at a Trump rally or at any kind of like any kind of like very partisan rally. I guess if the side it's, and I guess you could do it in a Democrat rally. If you showed up at a Biden rally and there was 3 Bidens, they're all pretending to be senile, shit in their pants. I don't know that the rally crowd would start laughing. You know, like whether it's a Trump or Biden. I was like that. I don't know if that played true, but as I was thinking that, they have the amazing like Numbers and Wrench drum soundtrack as Danish Graves bust out of that. You know, just it's like cool guys not looking at explosions. He's just got this big shit-eating grin on his face. The music, he's popping his collar. He's getting into his very impractical Dakota winter Porsche. Not great for maybe he's got chains on it, I don't know, but it was very satisfying to see this very puffed up, you know, like the Dot says, like, do you realize how insane you sound? And now like it's like it's like, you know, the Wizard of Oz, you know, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain here. This weak man who's just punched a woman and is fleeing the scene of the crime, you know?
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, very enjoyable scene.
So Dot has managed with this tool to successfully remove one of her legs from the chains. She's got one more to go.
Oh, she did. I must have missed that.
Yeah, she just gets one of them off, and then she's about to start in a second. And Gator shows up to check on her because he's been left behind, I guess, for this purpose. They get a chance to talk about his mom. This upsets him so much that he fires a shot through Trooper Farr's windshield as he tears out of the property. Let's talk about this.
I had some notes about this one. Right. A few things. One, do you think, because she starts saying, hey, I saw Linda, I can take you. At the time you were watching this scene, did you think that she was just lying to him, or that she still really believed that?
Dude, I was going back and forth about whether she is just, because she's not above some pretty dastardly manipulation. Like what she says about his name is pretty hurtful. And I don't know if it's true. I don't know if Roy would have ever told her that, but I think the way that the windmill revelation plays out later in this episode leads me to believe that she is kind of suffering from a delusion. That she is like, when they said, like Danish Graves says, excuse us, but we have our own reality over here. That literally she has had some kind of psychotic break between the accident, between the sleep deprivation, between the abuse. I really do think she believes that she met Linda at Camp Utopia and she's gotten confused.
Yeah.
Is that how kind of you shakes out with you?
Yeah, at the time that the scene was happening, I thought she was just trying to manipulate him. Mm-hmm. But by the end, in that reveal that you talked about, and her revelation that Linda was actually killed, that you look at that differently in retrospect. I think she really did believe it, or think she really was believing it. The other thought I had was this idea of villains becoming heroes. And maybe I'm kind of getting ahead of myself because it's the next scene that I was going to bring this up at. But, just going back, I'll save that for now because it's the next scene when Bruce mentioned the car that I want to bring this up. Yeah. But I think in this scene with Gator, she's really trying to Luke Skywalker him. Uh-huh. Like, I still see good in you.
Yes.
Right?
She absolutely is.
And despite him Vadering her back and saying the things that he says. And so I think there's been a discussion all season about, is Gator redeemable? Him being the Jack Skellington, wanting to be the good guy. Is he too far gone? Is he like Burke in Aliens? Yeah. Like he's a total asshole, but maybe at the last minute he's gonna become a hero in some way and redeem himself. I don't know. What do you think?
The real question is old Munch going to give him a chance to turn that leaf? Because that's at the end of the scene, you see the dark shadow of Munch arise from his back seat, and it's like, it might be too late. But on the other hand, we kind of talked about this last episode with Pete. Old Munch is a sin eater. Like, his job is to take on people's sins and leave them blameless. So he would be in an interesting metaphysical position to facilitate Gator flipping over a new leaf. But I don't know, man. I don't know. That old Munch does not look like you think about how pissed he was at Gator killing his adopted mother. Like, man, I don't know. What do you have a feeling on it one way or another? Or?
Yeah. So I think my guess would be that Gator is going to have some type of redemptive arc, because I think there have been too many signs to point towards it to not have some aspect of redemption from him. I don't know what that would look like. The fact that when he comes out of the cabin, you can see that her words have gotten to him.
Sure.
Like he tried to make it seem like it didn't bother him and he snapped back. But we see that it's affecting him. So I think, one, that matters. And we have the whole season of him just wanting to live up to this evil father of his. Mm-hmm. I don't know what it might look like, but it may be something where he comes to the rescue to some extent. I don't know personally if he makes it out alive, like the redemption.
That's the thing.
May cost him his life. I think what he's done has been so bad that the payment for redemption will have to be his life in some extent.
And I don't know if I believe
that's just my thought
until last episode, because like I was thinking of all the season, he's been much more bark than bite. You know, we haven't actually seen him kill anyone, but he definitely killed that old woman. You know, I don't think he meant to.
And he tried to,
but he did.
He tried to, yes, and he tried to kill Munch.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know if trying to kill Munch is necessarily.
I don't know that Munch isn't innocent, but like, you know, that poor old woman.
That's true.
That poor old woman was uncalled for.
Yeah.
So I do like with Fargo's like sense of karmic balance. It feels like I could see him redeeming himself. I could see him dying, old Munch eating his sins. I could see him sacrificing himself to give Scotty or Dot a chance, and him dying. But like him making it out, I don't know. Especially it's because up until last episode, I thought he might be 20, 21, 22. But found out he's 27. Like, he's a grown ass man. He's been doing a lot of this stuff with his eyes wide open. Yeah.
Yeah, for a long time. The other thing I think this show has been, this season has been doing so well is changing our minds about how we feel about people who at first we see as villainous. Mm-hmm. You know, Munch at the beginning was a crazy man shooting people left and right, trying to kill Dot. But I don't know about you, but when I saw him come out in the back seat, there was a little bit of, Munch, get him. Would you say you felt like that?
I mean, because Gator needs to be taken down, you know? Gator had a chance to be a sweet boy. That chance is long gone. The only, like we discussed, the only way I can see him redeeming himself is sacrificing himself to save some other innocent worthy. So, like, it's but Munch, he is. You love your instruments of vengeance, right? Of righteous fury. And regardless of what you feel about Munch and his criminal lifestyle and all that stuff, like that's what he's what we call an anti-hero. He's Frank Castle. He's the Punisher. He's the Bruce Willis in Sin City. You know, he's not a good guy. What's that they say about True Detective? It's like sometimes you need bad men to keep the other bad men from the front door. Munch is that bad man, you know? He's the guard dog.
Yeah. And he's almost like just like a force of nature in a sense, where he's not necessarily, I mean, you can make an argument that he's evil, but you can also make the argument he's neither good nor evil. He's just this force of nature that will go in the direction of the payment he's received, and maybe because of that he's evil, so I don't know, but there's this idea of us rooting for how easy it is for us to root for evil when we see it going against something else that we see as evil.
True.
Did you ever see that movie The Prophecy with Eric Stoltz and Viggo Mortensen?
No, I have not.
It basically is a movie about angels and demons fighting over the right, and the main angel, Gabriel, who's played by, his name is escaping right now, the watch dude from Pulp Fiction. I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. Christopher Walken.
Yes, thank you.
So Christopher Walken plays Gabriel, and he's mad at God, and so he's trying to come to Earth and kind of take over. But at the end, spoiler alert for like a 30-year-old movie, at the end, Viggo Mortensen plays Satan, and he doesn't want Gabriel taking over his stuff. So he, in a sense, he kind of comes and saves the day. So you kind of root for Satan for a small bit because he beats the guy who's been the main bad guy the whole time.
Right.
I think it's a little bit of that sense going on here too as well.
It is maddening to see, because that's the thing, is like it's written in 500-mile high text that the Tillmans are finished. They have multiple investigations closing in. They just humiliated themselves on the debate stage. Gator, the heir to the empire, is Gator, who's dumb.
Right. Exactly.
What Tillman's, or not Tillman, what the officer Farr says here. It's like, I know you don't think so, but the consequences are coming, and they're almost here.
Yes.
It's maddening to see these people, like how much, and it's like if you look at like other authoritarian regimes, you think of like Nazi Germany and fascist Italy and Imperial Japan, and like how much destruction these mindsets can cause with their inevitable demise, you know, because that's the other thing. It's like this is no way to organize a society the way Roy's doing in Stark County, the way they were doing in Nazi Germany. It's a house divided against itself. You can't have any peace when you don't have any kind of justice, but yet they can do so much damage on their way out. And like it's already done. Like from the start of this season, when the FBI showed up and saw his nipple rings in the hot tub, Roy was pretty much finished. You know, lots of investigation, lots of prosecution, but but look at all the damage they're going to do on their way out. Danish.
That might explain why he's building up this arsenal.
I wonder, but what the hell? What's one county in North Dakota? Like it's like. You know, unless you're going to go, isn't it the Dakotas where they keep all the nuclear missiles? Maybe they're going to go for a couple bunkers and go like Lex Luthor style take over, because that's what they'd have to do, I think. Yeah. I don't think North Dakota's seceding from shit, you know?
Right.
So Danish is gassing up his Porsche, getting ready to head back to Minnesota before Trooper Farr, who's here, he's there, he's everywhere, notices him, pulls up, and gives him a bit of info about Roy and Dorothy. Ultimately ends up in his demise.
Lots of stuff about this scene. First of all, it looks like he was ignoring Lorraine's phone calls. Is that the impression you got?
I want to talk about this in the next scene when he pockets the phone.
Okay.
Because I think there's an interesting thing is like they do two things established in that insert in this scene. This man has 75% battery and 5 bars of reception. They're wanting you to know that there is nothing wrong with his phone. And he gets a phone call at Roy's property, which means you could be like, oh, well, maybe it works in downtown City Square, Stark County, seat of the capital, but out in Roy's ranch, no, this is a fully functional phone, which might have some plot implications for the future. But it is interesting that he hesitates. I do wonder, because in this scene he thinks about calling Lorraine for information, but he doesn't. Right. Why do you think he decides to kind of go maverick on this?
So my theory is that, one, I think he genuinely cares about Dot. And I think he genuinely cares about the family. Like, if you think back to like one of the first episodes, like he wanted to be in the picture and he felt kind of bad when she said no, for family only. He has like this sad look on his face, whatever. So I think he cares. And, you know, Wit specifically tells him, you need to act fast if you're going to do anything. And I think at this point, as far as he knows, and correct me if I'm wrong, he doesn't know that, and again, I could be wrong, but does he know that Lorraine is starting to build an affection for Dot? I don't think so. Based on...
I don't think so.
So as far as he knows, she still doesn't like Dot. He cares about Dot, and he wants to act. And so I kind of think he's doing this whole thing on his own.
You think he's trying to feather his nest kind of bit with like, hey, if I solve this on my own and just present her with like all the solutions to her problems, then this will get me in tighter with them, or they'll treat me as family, or you just think it's the...
I think it could be two birds with one stone. One, true, legitimately trying to rescue Dot, and if he's able to get Roy to drop out, he does that too. So I kind of feel like he's going rogue in a way by going to this property by himself. Okay. Personally.
Let me ask you.
Because I think he thinks he can, try this idea.
Let me ask you this. Does Wit do him a little dirty by not saying, oh, by the way, this guy just put a bullet through my windshield? Work fast, but also these fuckers are crazy. Because the thing is like, there's another interesting thing about... I don't think he knows anything about Lorraine and Dot and any of this Indira kind of doing this girl power thing. But also, crucially, he was shut out of all of the dealings that Roy had with Lorraine. He comes in, is like, hey, do I need to be part of this? And she's like, no. Right. So he had like a brief, weird interaction with him, but like he doesn't know how kind of crazy Roy is. And I...
Totally.
Yeah, I wonder if Officer Farr should have give him a little heads up about it. See my windshield? Before you go out there, but I mean, what does he think? That this guy's going to drive out there himself?
Yeah. I don't think he was thinking that.
But on the other hand, I do think it's wild that a state trooper is saying my hands are tied to do anything when I was just shot at this guy's compound. Like, I don't know.
Right. So in the background, did you hear 1099 in progress is what makes Wit take off?
No.
Did you hear that? Or do you remember that?
No.
Yeah, so it says 1099 in progress. I looked it up. It's police code for officer being held hostage. I think that's relating to Gator being captured by Munch.
Oh,
that's what I'm thinking.
Interesting. Okay.
Because I feel like everything that happens in this show that you see in here is for a reason.
Oh, yeah.
So as soon as I heard that, I was like, okay, they want us to know that 1099's in progress. They could have had any other reason to have Wit drive off. So I looked it up and was like, actually, it's weird. It says either cardiac arrest or a law officer held hostage. So given the scene that we saw earlier... Because I was waiting to see, okay, are we going to cut back to the scene of Munch and Gator? And we never do. So I think that 1099 was related to Munch and Gator.
Nice catch,
personally.
Ron. Yeah, no, I could totally see that. So Roy pulls up to the ranch where his third wife, Karen, opines that Dot is actually the family albatross that needs to be gotten rid of, which inspires Roy to take a long walk back to the building where he's got Dot chained. Man.
Yeah. First of all, the mic drop with the Toxic by Britney Spears. First of all, the lyrics are dead on.
The downbeat minor chord version of Toxic over Don Draper's Long Walk Here was pretty choice. Yeah.
Yes. One, the lyrics, but also like when you think about the history of Britney and what she went through, it was kind of meta. Yeah. So being her in a sense being held captive. Yeah, totally. But yeah, that scene, like there's always something about a long oneer that is captivating. I mean, I assume your audience probably knows what a oneer is, but like a long shot that's not broken.
Yeah.
And there's always something about it that is captivating. Like whenever I see it, sometimes when I see one, it's not until a while that I realize, oh, wait a minute, this has been one long shot. And then I always rewind it and I want to confirm. But yeah, I think just like when I think about like, okay, why have this shot? Sylvan White was the director. Like, why did he choose to have this be like this one long shot? I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. Like what kind of feelings did it bring up for you?
So I do the same thing when I have this growing awareness of like, oh my God, this is a oneer. And then it's like, okay, why is it a oneer?
Right. Yes.
So I had the exact same reaction. I also do. I pulled out, I rewound it, got my stopwatch out. And I'm like, this is 3 seconds shy of 2 minutes of watching a man walk, tight zoom on his face.
Yes.
All but 5 of those are a oneer.
Yes.
And I think it's very interesting how John Hamm plays this guy. His like eyes are lined with rimmed with tears. And I think they're trying to get at the thin line between or the way that men, like a toxic trait of masculinity, is we convert all of our emotions. We tend to convert. Society teaches us to convert all of the emotions that we should feel as a healthy, complete, integrated individual. Like, are you feeling sad? Rage. Are you feeling ashamed or humiliated? Rage. Are you feeling hurt and insecure? Rage. Just like all those emotions converted into anger. And I can almost like a machine. You could see him from the start where his dad's like, God damn it, Karen, can't you see the man? Karen's in a no-win position. Nothing she can say or do.
Right.
The only use of women are like receptacles for the men's pain, and you can see his transmutation. I think that's what I got out of it. Watching his face set into that mask of where he start off as like a person who's confused and he's wounded and he's humiliated and, you know, probably needs to sit down and have a long think about his life. No, he's just going to turn that into rage and then pour it all out into this woman, and then his problem solved because he's not angry anymore.
Yeah. I think that's a great take on it. I would add to that, when you sit on his face for that long, there's something about the anxiety that's built when you know something bad is coming. And so for that whole time, because when first he gets out, you don't necessarily know that he's going to the camp. You have an idea, but he could be going back to someplace else. But it's not too long before you realize, okay, he's going to die. And that whole time, it's just that it's just an opportunity to build anxiety, to have your stomach start feeling uncomfortable because you see it coming, because you just know it's coming. It's about to explode. And then obviously it does. And then there's always something powerful about seeing this type of abuse happen where you don't see it.
Yes.
But you know that it's happening. It's a tough scene to watch, and when you know it's happening, especially when you think about how powerful that Dot has been all season, like avoiding this. She's been a badass despite the fact that she's so frail. You know, this is probably the only thing on the planet that actually scares her is this man. And despite everything she did, she's now back in his clutches. And so yeah, it was powerful.
I do think it's a very interesting choice, because I feel like a trend in the golden age of television has been to lean into the explicitness. Like if you have a sexual assault, if you have a woman being brutalized, to just like really have an unflinching glance at it. And it's like, you know, there's been a lot of ink spilt about how that makes people feel and whether that's like fair or not. I think it's really interesting how this season has mostly shown domestic abuse and sexual assault and stuff through like puppets, through a wide shot of a cabin, and you just hear thumps and stuff. And it's kind of like that scene of the puppet beating the other puppet and the screams, and like that's almost as disturbing as just seeing it happen, because it lets your imagination and just the horror of it. And I don't know, it feels like it's a lot classier and more artistic way to handle these subjects, and it feels like it lets Dot keep her power through these scenes. And I saw an interview where the Juno Temple I guess they actually shot this assault, and they did it on she requested a closed set, which means all non-essential, like unless you're an actor in front of the camera, or you're the guy, you're the director or the person running the camera, you are no lighting guys, no grips, no, everybody else get the fuck out, because it was a very intense, intimate, vulnerable scene for her. And it turns out they decided not to even use it. I think that's really interesting, that choice. It shows that they are preserving this character's kind of dignity and her power, because they don't shy away from the brutality when she takes it to Roy in the next scene. we get to see all the chains wrapping around and his eyes bulging.
Oh, yeah.
And like the violence that she gets to unleash against him, we get to see all of that. And I think it's all very carefully calculated to maximize the sympathy and the empowerment that Dot feels and minimize, you know, the impact of Roy's brutality, but not in like a letting him off the hook or minimize, you know, I'm trying to say I thought it's just great choices all around.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. I get the impression he didn't sexually assault her. He just beat her up.
I think they left it ambiguous. I saw some people debating it on the subreddit. And I like I said, it's ambiguous. I don't think you have to go for it either way. But the way, you know, the like he's panting and all that at the end, I think it's something that they might suggest, but I don't know.
Yeah. Obviously, if it is the sexual assault, that's that much worse, because it's a combination of the two. But yeah, the point that you made next about being able to see her again like a tiger, just fighting for her life to
giving
get
him
out.
Everything that he can handle.
Yeah, for sure.
And him like quoting Revelation, going on and on about the great whore Babylon as his like he's doing that, and it's such that, you know, because we see how like freak nasty he is in the bedroom. He's got his own LED spring-loaded sex box with his wife doing all of his kinky demands, and he's telling people that they're immoral and they're this and they're that. It's I don't know.
Yeah, it's classic. Yeah, it's a classic. Pious hypocrisy there, and he it seems like he was looking to kill her, because if that chain had connected at any point,
those were lethal shots, and she barely missed him. I think he was trying to kill her. For sure. He had lost control. And you see Danish Graves, like he's capable of it. He's ready. He's got no control in the latter half of this episode.
Right. And this is the scene where he says to her, "The rest was the dream.
Yeah,
you've always been here. The rest was the dream." Which I felt like was another good Wizard of Oz reference, in a sense.
Did you? I don't know. There's no way you heard this because this episode just dropped today. But when me and Pete were talking about because you know the last few seasons of Fargo have Wizard of Oz references. We had a big one last year. The last season 4
with the tornado.
Yeah. I'm wondering if they'll do an inversion of that, because like with Dot, her home is the place where she really wants to be, and this nightmare thing, the Wizard of the Land of Oz is the nightmare. I wonder if they'll do an inversion where at some point they'll go black and white. To show her kind of liberation and escape from this place, and it'll go back the color, kind of in an inversion of what they did last season.
Yeah. No, I did hear you and Pete talk about this, actually. And I thought that was an interesting take. It is, it's definitely something they could do. I don't know if they would necessarily specifically go to color or black and white or whatever.
I kind of think my theory is a little busted, because I think this is the episode it would have happened. Like the second he drags her onto his property, that's what I was kind of like, is it going to go black and white? Oh shit, my theory's kind of busted. But I don't know, maybe. Still a lot. There's still two episodes left.
Yeah.
So this brutal scene is interrupted by Danish Graves rolling up, so Roy's got to put this away for now. Handcuffs her to the frame, and this is the other evidence where, you know, she's saying, "I'm going to escape just like Linda," and Linda escaping. And he's like, "Yeah, you're going to end up the same way. I'm going to bury her right next to her." And this, you can kind of see Dot's eyeballs click, like, "Oh," but I don't think she's fully broken through from the delusion yet.
Right. I think that one other thing that this scene confirms, because there's been some discussion online about whether or not Scotty is Wayne's actual daughter, or is it, because she's old enough based on when Dot left that she could have been Roy's. I think we're confirmed in this scene that it's Wayne's.
How?
Because, you know, because Roy makes the comment, something along the lines of everything that comes after
the fruit of the poisonous tree.
the fruit of the poisonous tree, everything that comes after is a mistake. And she says Scotty's not a mistake. And so it's insinuated that Scotty, that Scotty was conceived after she escaped.
Okay. I mean, it would kind of be at this now after, it's kind of interesting theory to work through. But now after things happen, I guess I would say would be kind of a cruel reveal that Scotty is Roy's daughter.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But,
although I wouldn't put it past Noah Hawley to do that.
So Indira accepts Lorraine's job offer and incidentally tells her about Roy holding Dot, and Lorraine's ready to get to work right away with her new chief of security. That's a pretty small scene.
Yeah. I was hoping she took the job.
Yeah.
Now I heard, weren't you and Jim, I think a couple episodes back when you were discussing when she was offered it, whether or not it would be good for her to take the job?
See, I feel like, because I look at like the discussion online and people are like warming up to Lorraine actually being a hero. And I can't quite.
Yeah, she's definitely being made to be that.
Now, I think she might be a hero in the sense of like Ebenezer Scrooge, where it's like Ebenezer Scrooge is not a good person through 75, 80, 90% of Christmas Carol, but he finds redemption at the end through a personal journey he takes.
Right.
I need to see Lorraine make some changes. And I saw an interesting theory. It's like, well, maybe Lorraine's got the same backstory as Dorothy. Maybe she escaped from abuse and she has made herself from nothing. And I know a lot of people that tend to make themselves from nothing, have a little bit of there will be blood complex where it's like, they feel that they were uniquely powerful and strong and they did it from the sweat of their own brow and their physical and mental prowess, and they didn't need any handouts. And I wonder if Dot, she is seeing a reflection of her former self, and maybe she's gone cold and domineering and severe as a reaction to her feeling helpless and weak. I don't know. But I need to find out more about Lorraine, or I need Lorraine to have some kind of character arc from Ice Queen, Deader, because like I honestly, who's a bigger villain, Roy or Lorraine, is interesting because Roy brutalizes a much smaller people in a very direct way, but Lorraine is brutalizing a nation full of millions of people in a much more indirect and personal way. Like, is a serial killer worse than like the Enron executives that stole 200,000 old ladies' retirements? I don't know.
Yes.
Yes. When you're talking about immorality at scales, it's hard to. And I think Lorraine
definitely scales.
Lorraine is kind of like that Enron executive. She's just amoral and greedy, and that's not good.
I agree with you. She's not good. I don't think she's evil.
That's a good distinction.
I think
that's a good distinction.
I think Roy's evil.
Yeah.
Roy is evil.
Yeah.
And I don't think Lorraine needs to go through some type of redemptive arc. I think they've made a case that Lorraine, but not even that. I think they've made a case that Lorraine has a very strong sense of the subjugation that women have had and women who can take up for themselves. She doesn't like women who can't take up for themselves. And I think the reason why she didn't like Dot at first, because she saw Dot as some woman, probably a weak woman who just wanted to take advantage of Wayne's wealth.
Yeah.
But you sought to see it change when Indira made the case that, hey, this is a fighter. She's never asked for anything. Here are the bruises. And I think Lorraine sees, okay, this is like a woman who is worthy of my respect. Like, she is a true Amazon warrior. I almost see Lorraine as like an Amazon warrior queen. Like, I respect women who prove themselves. And Dot has proven herself, and so I think that's kind of what is going on.
Yeah, and I can see Lorraine. So they've already kind of maybe set this up too, because Lorraine was in the middle of the season trying to pivot from debt collection to lending, investing, banking.
Right.
And I wonder if that is like going to be the kind of Scrooge transformation, where and maybe she'll instead of just pivoting from to predatory debt collection and going into predatory lending, she'll like
Right.
maybe start a credit union, or she'll start something that can, get, I don't know, subsidized low income housing, or maybe she'll find a way to like forgive medical debt, but I do think I'm not saying she's evil, but I do think what she's doing is bad, and that she is preying on people, and that has to, for me to get on board with like her and Indira and Dot riding off into the sunset, on board with Indira, on board with Dot, but it's like the last Indiana Jones, The Crusade. It's like, I don't mind Indy running off the sunset and Indy's dad and the old museum guy. But if like Hitler's second lieutenant was on one of those camels or horses, like, no, wait, stop the movie. What?
Yeah.
And I think she needs to do something. She needs to do something.
We have 2 more episodes for her to do something.
Yeah. And we know she's going to be riding to the rescue of Dorothy. We know she's come around on Dorothy. She's come around on Dira. Maybe she is learning, growing. She's got the 2 ghosts of... We need a Ghost of Christmas Future to put the scare into her. And then that's Munch. And then her Scrooge transformation will be complete.
Right.
So we talked about this a little bit. Graves pulls up to the Roy compound, the Tillman compound. He gets a phone call from someone, and I think 99.9% of the audience, when he sees him put that phone in his pocket, are going to think that he didn't take the phone call. But what if he actually did take the phone call, and that phone is active in his pocket throughout the whole conversation he has with Roy? What if he has worked out some of the Lorraine, where it's like Lorraine's like, when you go and confront him, I want to hear it. I want to be there. And so she's going, and Roy thinks everything, but it's actually, they're going to have the location. They're going to have everything. Do you think that's a possibility, or is Danish not taking this phone call going to, going to thwart the investigation somehow?
Yeah. I think Danish not taking a phone call leans to him living up to his last name. Because, I mean, they already know. I mean, yeah, they could zero in on his phone to figure out where he is. But I think, given the fact that if he doesn't show up, Whit saw him, they can put the pieces together to figure out where he was.
Especially getting that phone call. Need that phone call says that his phone was still getting, like, they should know his precise last location, and it should be on Roy, at Roy's ranch. So,
right. Yeah, for sure. I think, like I said, I'm going back to what I said earlier. I think in a sense he was kind of going rogue, hoping to do this, Hail's Mary pass of threatening Roy with, or not threatening Roy, saying, hey, I can give you this election back if you let her daughter-in-law go, and just not realizing who he was dealing with.
So that leads us into the final 2 scenes. They're kind of intertwined. One, we see Dot noticing a windmill that starts to crumble, some of the reality she's constructed for herself. And then we see Danish Grave learn the difference between soft power and firepower.
Yes. What would you have done? Like, as soon as he pulled out that gun, first, he pulled it out once Danish admitted that he was the one who set up the extra Roys. And I think, because that was the humiliation, I don't know about you. I think he's thinking, oh, you're not going to use this.
Yeah.
You're just trying to scare me or something. And I kind of feel like I would have run, but I don't know how much of that is just me knowing how sociopathic or psychopathic that Roy is. To think that as soon as he pulled out that cannon, it would be time to get the hell out of there.
But I think that it just doesn't occur to him that I am a lawyer and you're the sheriff. This is your fucking house. You are not going to murder me. An officer of the court.
You're right.
And you're like, it's like, because you can even see, like, he scoffs. If his subtitles even scoffs when he pulls the gun out.
Yes.
Like, this is some bullshit.
Right.
North Dakota sheriff tactic. He's the big bad wolf. He's huffing and puffing. But let me ask you, I'm going to turn around. If Roy pulls out that hand cannon and Danish Graves, like, says, holy shit, I can see you're upset. I'm leaving now. Does he walk out of there alive?
Probably not.
Yeah, it's like I think once he walked in there and revealed that he's the one that architected the humiliation, he's a dead
He was
man.
dead. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
But also,
I mean, he would probably have gotten in the
this
back.
is insane. Like Roy's not like I'm not sure exactly when the end of the road was for him, whether it was like before the season started, middle of the season. But this is it. Like, yeah, you cannot kill a man. You cannot kill a high-powered lawyer with billionaire friends that had an active cell phone in your living room or in your den and get away. I can't imagine.
Yeah, he is off the deep end.
Yeah.
And I think the humiliation because I think Danish is right. He's not going to win the election. So he knows he's not going to win the election. Excuse me. And,
although I do wonder that. I do like I'd love to hear Noah Hawley talk about why he thinks Stark County would turn against Roy en masse. Because I'm always thinking about, like, you know, what Trump said in the lead up to the 2016 election. I could take my gun out on Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and people would still vote for me. Like, that's kind of where we're at. So
I think you're right. You're probably right.
But I don't know. Maybe that only works for guys like, you know, it only works for guys like Donald Trump. I don't. It's unclear if you can replicate that particular blend in another person.
Right.
But so that's that. And then we see Dot is kind of fucking with the cot again. There's this little 12 by 12 window. She busts out, tries to scream because I think she knows Danish is there. And then she sees that windmill, the windmill where she found that little cache from Linda that had the card in it. And she realizes this is when it really hits her that, like, oh my God, I have completely replaced reality.
Right. So here are the two things about this scene that get me. One, the utter look of despair in her face, and the framing where it's framed to make it look like she's behind bars. So let me ask you this before I tell you what I think. One, do you think she gets out? And if so, how?
I think she's going to be saved by a coordinated effort of multiple people coming together. I think it's going to be a little bit of old Munch. I think it's going to be a little bit of Indira and Lorraine. It's going to be a little bit of Officer Whit Farr. Have I left anybody out? Is there another? I might be Gator. There might be an assist from Gator. But I think that, like, this whole season is about the tiger who doesn't need and does not want and does not accept help. But I think the last two episodes are about how even a fierce tiger like Dorothy needs her pride. I don't know what you call it, the equivalent of pride of lions. Or it's about a tiger becoming a lion and being embraced by the pride of lions. Literal lions in this case. Lorraine's lions. What are you thinking?
I hope you're right.
You don't think she's dying, do you?
No.
Okay.
I don't think she's dying. Yeah, no, I don't think that.
That would be
no
wild.
Hollywood have. That would be. I know it can get dark, but not after
It'd be like
the story.
Marge in the original Fargo getting killed by, Steve Buscemi. It's like, what? No.
Right. But I started to wonder if she's going to 187 days her way out of that.
I don't get that. What's the 87 days? What's that?
187, the movie. Have you ever seen the movie 187 Days? It's about that hiker who went hiking. It's based on a true story.
Oh, Aaron Ralston? The guy who cuts his own arm off? Okay,
yes.
Okay. All right. I haven't seen that movie,
because
but I know that story.
So here are the ways they've kind of laid the groundwork where they could possibly be it. Specifically, Whit says she looked like a trapped animal.
Yeah.
They've made numerous allusions to her being an animal, fighting no matter what. In her mind, the only two people who know she's there are Whit and Danish. She knows that Danish is dead, and she believes that Whit is not coming for her because of what she said. We see the despair in her eyes. We know that she's a fighter who will fight for life nonstop. It's in the middle of the night. She doesn't have time to wait for the cavalry or for a Deus Ex Machina to come and get her out. My concern is that her only way out in her mind, I don't know, is to knock her hand off somehow. Like, I can see it being dark enough where that happens. Now, since there's 2 episodes
Going full
left,
Saw, huh? That's
yeah,
wild.
It's wild, and maybe it's too wild. Maybe one happened, but I feel like there are all these little things that they left that could, where you can make that argument.
Yeah.
But I hope I'm wrong.
I'm thinking old Munch is going to get naked and covered in blood and shit and start drawing runes over the place. And also, because the other thing is, like, don't ever forget, this show can go just fucking full on supernatural metaphysical. Like, this show has that gear, and it hasn't quite popped off yet. Like, we've gotten all the weird, like, maybe Munch is 500 years old, maybe he dabbles in witchcraft, I don't know, but like,
right.
Yeah, they could do just some, like, a UFO could show up and beam Dot into the Twilight Zone, and like, that's the thing that can happen. I think that happened in season 2.
Yeah, the UFO happened in season 2, but it didn't like beam anybody.
I know. But you know,
there was a distraction. I know what you mean, but has there ever been a situation where the supernatural that happens in the show actually does anything?
That's the thing, and I worry for my co-host Jim. Like, if COVID doesn't kill him, that might, because like, that's the thing that we've always said is, like, you know, the day that like the supernatural stuff like carries the day in Fargo is going to be a rough day for us. But
yeah. I don't think it'll go there. What motivation? You mentioned Munch. What motivation would he have to come rescue Dot? I don't think he has. I think her best chance is, we know that Indira and Lorraine are on their way, and maybe Wit will get involved as well, and so maybe something will happen where the cavalry will come,
especially
before anything.
Indira is hired to be her head of security, which implies that all those mercenaries that they got from Vegas, the John Wick dudes, are going to be under her command. So it's going to be like a small private army hitting Roy's place.
So hopefully that will be it.
Yeah.
Hopefully that. Maybe my mind's just going too wild, and she'll get out.
Yeah,
from the cavalry.
You can tell the despair really sets in when she realizes that's Danish that they're dropping into the cistern they got underneath that cattle trough, that feed bin. It's like, oh god. And I think she might be recovering a repressed memory of Linda, you know, her being aware that Linda's in that hole.
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
And what do you think? Do you think Gator knows? Because like, do you think Gator knows that Linda's dead and his mom's dead?
No, because based on his reaction when he came out the cabin, he wasn't acting like someone who knew his mom was dead. He was acting like someone who's struggling with what she said. Like, if he knew for a fact his mom was dead, he wouldn't even need to buy it. He was moved by it. So the idea, I think he thinks that his mom ran away, and he is now being faced with the fact that no, his dad probably killed his mom.
It's interesting. To your point in the middle of the night situation, though, I know I thought I detected the sounds of footsteps approaching in snow as the credits hit, implying that like Dot's not going to have the whole night to herself. That's the one thing.
Meaning he's coming back?
Yeah, that she might. Yeah, she's not going to have time to gnaw her foot off, or at least not until Roy has another.
That's a good point too. Another round,
or it could be old Munch. Could be naked, shit covered old Munch.
Oh, right, because Munch may not have a motivation to save her specifically, but he would have a motivation to take Gator back to the compound.
He has a motivation to take down the Tillmans, and I think he's at least I think he at least admires her as a force of nature, as a fact. We haven't talked about this, Ron.
That's a great.
Dot, is she supernatural? It's interesting because like there's the whole theory that like she apparently went from Stark County, North Dakota, back to Scandia, Minnesota, which is an 8-hour drive. And it's reinforced in this episode where Trooper Farr says, "You're a long way from home. I'm getting off. I can drive you back," implying that it's longer than you could get on foot. But she made that trip in a single night on foot, barefoot in the cold and the snow. I'm wondering, like, that's something I've been kind of teasing around. Or they might reveal that Dorothy is kind of like the same type of thing the old Munch is. Maybe she's a new sin eater, or she might have some kind of way. But then you're going into the supernatural actually being a Deus Ex Machina rather than just a
exactly,
mystery.
which you don't.
Yeah. So
right. Now I remember you and Jim discussing that regarding the first episode. I kind of like your point you just made about Munch having a respect for her, because I remember the way he talked about her being a tiger. I could see that. I could see him showing up, wanting to take the Tillmans down, having him show up, be the distraction that's needed to keep Dot safe for another period of time from Roy, like the way Danish was, and then the rest of the cavalry coming in, and then I don't know, Dot cutting through the rest of the chain or something. So I'm starting to have a little bit more hope that she's going to keep all of her appendages.
You think old Munch makes it out of the season? Does he live to Munch again?
I do think, yeah. I do think Munch makes it. I not too sure about Gator. Roy sure as hell better not make it out. I have a theory.
No, Roy actually might end up in a wood chipper, and honest to God, like, I'm kind of like, looking to see like him getting into some kind of farm machinery. He's going to end bad. It's going to be bad and bloody. My prediction.
So one idea I was thinking is, if we're going off the Wizard of Oz analogy, and if Roy is the Wicked Witch of the West, how is the Wicked Witch of the West killed? She was killed with water. And there's this whole thing with Roy in his hot tub in episode 1.
Yeah.
It'd be really cool if somehow the water from that hot tub leads to his demise. If he's drowned in it, I don't know. It was just a wild. I was trying to think.
No, I like that. What
could be a Wizard of Oz way for Roy to go out? But he needs to go out.
Yeah.
The question is, who does he take with him? I think if Gator does go out, I think it will be bittersweet. I think, like I said, it may be in his redemption and saving Dot. Maybe he lays his head on her lap one last time and then he dies or something. I don't know. I can see that happening. I see Lorraine making it out, although I could see, I'm 50-50. I could see her getting the kick in the bucket in this season.
Because it'd be interesting if Lorraine dies. I think Wayne would take over her company, and I would like to see like what Wayne and Dorothy could do with those billions of dollars, focused not on greed but on like community building or something. That would be interesting too. And it's a way maybe she could redeem herself from her
with Indira as their
chief of security. Yeah, as their new Danish Graves.
Yeah, and is their new Danish Graves in a sense. Totally.
All right, I think we got it figured out. Buddy. You got any other thoughts on the episode or any other predictions for us, or should we get the feedback?
So one question I had was, has there been any confirmed connection yet of this season to any of the past seasons? Because every season's been connected somehow. I have a theory as to what a connection could be, but I just want to make sure there hasn't already been. Are there any theories out? I haven't read any of the interwebs.
I haven't seen anything. I know that like Lorraine's husband, he's got a really unusual name, like Wick, and that was also the name of a minor character. I think he's the guy who was like Mr. Wrench and Numbers handler in the first season, is also named Wick. But like that's the only one that I've seen. It doesn't mean it's the only one that exists, because like, I realized that like for the last 2 weeks when we were on vacation, I wasn't like looking at what the subreddit would say. So like I've missed like 2 or 3 weeks of community speculation. But like, yeah, I haven't seen the connections yet.
So this is my hope. I don't even think it's a long shot. It's a medium shot. So and my theory is, like, whenever there's a main character that's a black character, he's connected somehow.
You got a Jerome theory for me?
What if Wit
Wit
is the son of narrator from season 4, because the teenager who gets out at the end of season 4, I think her last name's Ethereal Smutney or something.
Oh yeah, who becomes the guy of that's trying to take over. Was it Lindegards? I forget, in season 2. What was that guy's name?
Well, that you're thinking of. I think it was like Milligan.
Yeah, Mike Milligan.
Or something like that.
Mike Milligan.
Well, he was the son of Chris Rock's character.
Yes,
that's revealed.
Yes,
in season 4.
You're saying talking about far as the son of him.
No, the narrator from season 4 was that teenage girl. She's the one, the really smart one at the beginning of season 4.
Yeah.
Etheridge. Is that how you pronounce it? Yeah. And then at the end, she goes off with her, because she's old enough where her son would be Whit's age.
Interesting.
Because that was that was around the 50s. She was a teenager, so she could have had him in the mid 70s. That would make him 40 something in 2019.
I do like. I mean, I can see kind of like the cut from the same cloth. Those are pretty. She's a pretty righteous character. He seems like he's got a lot of moral integrity and fortitude.
Exactly.
And brave, courageous. Yeah.
That's my secret hope.
Does he have a ghost watching out for him? Is that why he survived Mr. or exactly. Munch's assault?
Yeah. Another possibility of what would be a good connection, Lorraine, like you said, Lorraine somehow could be connected to one of the past seasons. But you'd be curious to see what the connection is and how obvious they will or won't make it.
Yeah, I was. I wanted to say something about. No, I'll leave that for feedback. I think I got it. There's a thing of feedback in that. But yeah, because I'm always looking for the bag of cash, which me and Pete had a little bit of disagreement about, and I've got a resolution for that in the feedback. But maybe we should get.
Disagreement about what bag?
About your
disagreement about.
Yeah, so I said, like, I've always been looking for the bag of money that Steve Buscemi buried in the Fargo movie to come back up, and he's like,
that was the season 1.
That showed up in season 1. But you see, we're going to spoil the feedback here. I want to entice people to listen to feedback to see how that resolves, because it turns out that money is still in play, even though it was addressed in season 1.
Oh, let's hear it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to. You're trying to get me to spoil feedback, man. So
no, not at all.
You got any other points, or should we get there?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay. So that's going to be the episode this week. We're about to consider feedback. Fargo at baldmove.com if you want to send stuff in. But first, I got to tell you that if you would like to follow us on social media, we're at baldmove everywhere, except for TikTok. We're at baldestmove there. If you like what we're doing here at Bald Move, you want more premium, bonus, additional audio and video content and ad-free feeds, check out our Patreon at support.baldmove.com. You can join instantly and get access to tons of extra content, and again, ad-free feeds. Fargo at baldmove.com is, again, our feedback address. We got Justin S. up first. We had a question. This is back from Dot getting forcibly committed to the psych ward, and we're like, how is the psychic hospital the same hospital? Justin S. said, I assumed all hospitals have psych wards. I was born in 82. I've had several surgeries over the next 20 years and had a family member admitted to a psych ward, all in the same hospital in Sandusky, Ohio. Fellow Buckeye here. Maybe it's a smaller town thing. This checks out. Like, now that I think about it, like, would rural Minnesota or North Dakota have a separate mental institution, emergency room? It's probably all connected. And then go ahead.
No, I was gonna say my brother used to work in a psych ward that was in a hospital in New Jersey.
Yeah, I actually had an anonymous person reached out that's like, they didn't want to use their name, but they have some firsthand experience with this stuff too. And they said, in my state, all you need for an involuntary commit for mental health is a judge order. This can be done over the phone and takes about an hour. We also transport directly to the hospital ER for a 24-hour hold for medical evaluation. Not sure for how long you get this arrangement to stick, but it wouldn't be hard for someone wielding a lot of political power to have you tied up in a local ER for at least a short term. If you were trying to build a case to take custody of a child away from their mother, having an involuntary mental health stint on her record would be most helpful. And then someone else chimed in saying that a police can arbitrarily extend the mental safety hold for like 24 hours in their state. And then you can a doctor can voluntarily extend it to up to 72 hours. And then you need a court order, which I hear is pretty easy to get. Like if a doctor calls and says this patient's a threat to themselves or others, most judges are going to sign off on that, at least in the short term. So yeah, that was a lot more plausible than I was thinking.
Yeah, I agree.
Brett from Fishers, Indiana says, I don't see Lorraine as a villain. I did at first, but that changed in the Tiger episode. Lorraine seems to have created her hard persona in order to deal with the world she inhabits. While she's crass, she isn't wrong in what she says about debt. She isn't wrong in how she describes the world. She could definitely be nicer about it when she interacts with Indira, but I'm not going to be the one to tell Lorraine she should be nicer or smile more. I think that'd be a bad thing for a guy to do. The Tiger episode is where I first started to stand Dot and Lorraine. After the Tinder Trap episode, I'm adding Indira to make this a thruple, a threesome couple. I can't wait to see how they take down Roy and his operation. Yeah, I mean,
I'm with you, Brett.
Yeah, you and Roy have gone squishy on Lorraine on me. I do think she is a villain, but I don't think she's beyond redemption.
When you say villain, what do you mean by that?
I mean, it's implied that her business is kicking out an elderly couple in November in Minnesota from their house. Like, I understand.
Is that her business, though?
Well, I mean, she's a debt collection. We've definitely seen her, like the fact that Indira's car is getting repossessed. Like, I don't know. It's all about the morality of debt, I guess. And, everyone, because the system we live in, everyone's got to make money and the way you got to make it. But like the way she talks about it, the way she talks about the personal responsibility of it, the way she talks about like it doesn't seem like I said, she's evil. She's a villain in the same way Ebenezer Scrooge is. She's living her life the way society tells her she should, but that's an insane way to live.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
Yeah. Yeah, but like I said, it's what I'd say about Lorraine. You could abstract just almost any arbitrary billionaire in the world. Zuby says, on your Fargo season 5 episode 5 cast, you guys discussed the 2 FBI agents and questioned whether they were mainly there for comedic purposes. I think the characters are pretty much the same as Key and Peele's FBI agents from season 1. They're side characters investigating the season's main antagonist who have funny moments and, if I recall correctly, die a typically horrific Fargo death. I don't believe this season's agents will make it out alive either.
I can see that.
I can see that. I can also see them being the equivalent of the CIA agents in Burn After Reading, where they're like one step behind action, always reporting back to the superior officer, and it's kind of like a Kafka-esque farce, rather than the more Key and Peele, Keystone Cops routine they did in season 1. But I actually like that.
Right.
They are pretty funny. They are pretty funny and quirky and offbeat for FBI agents. They're very Mulder and Scully.
Yeah. There's something about FBI agents in movies. I always think about, was it Johnson & Johnson and Die Hard? Weren't they the FBI?
Yeah. Yes, they are. I just watched that in the theater less than a month ago. And but talking about Keystone Cops, Die Hard as an institution has very low opinion of at least West Coast cops. But I guess the East Coast cops in Die Hard 2 don't get much better treatment. Like John McClane's the only cop that has a fully functional brain.
Great.
Zach says, hope you all had a good break. Overall, I like these episodes, and I have a few comments. I hate the title sequence about it being a true story, and when the rest of the title fades out to leave true. It's so stupid. I
hate it.
You hate it too?
I'm totally with this. I hate it. It drives me so batty. What's the point? Like for the first movie, I don't remember. Like it's not true for the movie either. Like the movie, there's nothing about the.
I don't think it fades out and does that thing. And like I could see making the argument to do this at the start of every season, but it feels a little weird. Commit to the bit, self-important to do it every episode. Yeah.
I can see that. Yes, maybe at the beginning of the season, by every episode. But like, what's the point of doing it at all? honestly. Like, I just feel like there's something when you first saw the movie, whether or not it was real for the movie, there was something powerful about the possibility that this stuff or something close to it happened, and they changed all the names, but this is exactly how crazy it was. And whether or not it really happened, you can find out later, oh, it never really happened.
I think so.
But now, they do it every season, every episode, so like, these can't all be crazy true stories. So, like, I don't know to what extent, I don't know to what end we have these opening credits.
It's a
saying
weird,
that this is a true story.
It's a framing device, because I think season 3 revealed that these are all stories from some kind of like true crime in the Midwest kind of book, and it's a signature. It's kind of like the way Lil Wayne, like all of his tracks begin with a kind of, it's the kind of thing he does to identify that this is a Lil Wayne joint. Like, that's Noah Hawley saying, this is my Coen Brothers shit. This is me doing the Coen Brothers thing.
True.
But every single episode, it's a bit much.
Right, I know. Yeah. I like, if you're going to do it, I can see it at the beginning of the season.
Imagine if every reel in Fargo, every 10, 15 minutes, you got that thing on there. It's like, no, get out of here. One and done.
Yeah.
One and done.
Yeah.
Zach says, number 2, I miss Witt, or whoever this South Dakota patrol officer was. He was competent, and I'm not sure where he's been. Zach, you're the rainmaker. You mentioned his name, and now you got him. So
and he comes back.
And it looks like he's going to be a big part of the rest of the season.
Which is nice.
3, why did they add the Sin Eater subplot? You can make a character hard to kill, all 80s action heroes, without the mysticism. I mean, you're preaching to this choir, Zach. If this guy was just like an Anton Sugar, remorseless killer, amoral killer, I think he'd be just as fascinating as if he's maybe a 500-year-old Welsh Sin Eater. But I do think thematically the Sin Eater thing adds a lot. They haven't done much with it.
I think that's why.
But there's something tasty about, like, look at how the upper class has abused the lower class through history. Back then, I mean, that's the sick thing about, if you get into the mind of the Sin Eater thing, they're not taking this man's fortune. They're not taking this man's earthly belongings. They're literally taking his soul. This man's going to go to hell for these people. And they believe that. And that's like,
right.
I mean, Jesus, at least when we die, all debts are done, like with Lorraine's Lion Company and all that. So, like, I do think it adds it. But it's like, Holly just puts a whole bunch of stuff in the gumbo and lets it cook, man. Like, why is a sausage in a gumbo? Why is rice? Why is chicken broth? Why is salt? Like, any one thing you could question, but they're all just adding flavor, right?
Well, I think we have 2 episodes left for him to complete the loop on the significance of Munch being a Sin Eater specifically.
True. Yeah, we're trying to gauge.
And personally,
the book,
I don't think he's
all the way through it.
Yeah, and personally, I don't think he's 500 years old. I think maybe he's a descendant of that original Munch that we saw.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've talked about in previous episodes the fact that his Ole is like a form of the Norwegian way to say son of. Olaf is son of somebody. Ole is a form of that.
Right,
so
right.
like you could probably understand he's son of a monk. So like that would imply he's not the original. I think
exactly.
And number 4, I like the acting. I'm invested in all the main characters. There's a lack of subtlety in most of the secondary cast, though. For example, the golf husband can't just be a guy chasing a dream way past where he should, but he is a man baby who wants a mommy wife. I agree with you here too. I think this is kind of like use a Star Trek term. Me and Jim sometimes talk about this, like Star Trek Next Generation syndrome, where it's like Patrick Stewart, fucking amazing. Jonathan Frakes, Brent Spiner, random planetary governor of the week. Sometimes you get James Cromwell, and sometimes you get some dude from Days of Our Lives that can't hit his marks and is obviously reading off cue cards. Like, they can't all be bangers, I guess.
That's a burn in one of the longest running daytime soap operas of history.
Right.
You're saying they're not real actors? Is that what you're saying, Aaron?
Am I starting beef with the daytime soaps? Oh man. Will my podcast empire ever survive that battle?
I just realized you're Aaron and I'm Aaron.
I'm Aaron and you are Aaron. Yeah.
I don't know why that just hit me.
I think the Lars thing is that I think there's been a couple of excesses this season.
The Lars thing and the son of the mother of the older woman.
A little too much.
He was a little too mustache twirly bad. Like he was a kind of over the top, I thought.
I just needed a reason for Indira to be hitched
to show us something.
Like when they revealed the fact that he has this expensive drum kit from his last dream that she threw everything into, I'm like, oh my God, you've done this more than once, girl.
Yeah. They needed something to make us believe why she would stay with this dude.
All right, Spoof Finger, who is an actual Minnesotan, had some comments,
all right.
Specifically about Leptard, which I think I've not heard that myself, but I think it's a Midwestern insult. He says, "I'm a Minnesota born and raised, and I've only ever heard Leptard on this show. I'm from the cities, but I have family in some rural areas and haven't heard it once. It's not in lexicon with hot dish, ope. Let me scoot right past you there. Duck, duck, gray duck, meat raffle, yeah sure, and oofta. I don't know where they got this from." I mean, that's the thing. It's like the Midwest is interesting because ope is definitely like an Indiana, Ohio thing, but duck, duck, gray duck, and meat raffle. What the fuck are you talking about? You know, but you know, we've got Cincinnati chili, and we probably say soda instead of pie. I don't know. There's a lot of subtle differences between like upper Midwest and lower Midwest, and it gets weird in Ohio and Pennsylvania the closer you get to the coasts, but. He also says on a military model, says, I was in the Army for 10-ish years, and I never knew anybody that had model planes or tanks or recreational sand tables. It's not like people were hiding their nerddom either. There was guys in the Warhammer 40K, painting minis, Magic the Gathering, tons of World of Warcraft folks. A guy who was still in the EverQuest, one dork in MOS training claimed that he was able to speak Klingon. I was in from 2003 to 2014, which was peak global war on terror, so maybe people are too cynical to be in actual military models. We probably would have bagged them for drinking the Kool-Aid. I feel like I think Jim was talking about this angle about the Wick being like this kind of frustrated military historian kind of guy. I think for this kind of wargaming, this kind of like, you know, building Panzers and Shermans and stuff, you have to go up above colonel rank. Like, this isn't going to be enlisted. This isn't going to be your. This is, you got to be 50 years old and at least a full bird colonel before you start getting into this kind of shit.
Right.
Jordan G says, your coverage on Indira for the season of Fargo has suddenly made me think of potential parallels with Dom from Mr. Robot. Do you know? Did you watch Mr. Robot?
I didn't.
Okay.
I know about it. So tangentially, but I never watched it.
So Dom is an FBI agent character played by Grace Gummer, who's the daughter of Meryl Streep, by the way.
Oh, wow.
She says something about you both speaking about Lorraine potentially recruiting her in particular. This isn't a direct parallel, but Mr. Robot Dom has a fascination with crime and the aspects that surround it. As well as fighting crime, she's intrigued and impressed by it. For example, she works with Darlene, which is Mr. Robot's sister, turns out. Which leads to often pushing her professional boundaries. An example is how Indira is intrigued by Dot, so she seems to agree to mind her child against her better judgment. The way Dom becomes embroiled with the Dark Army, and though devastated, it brings out her brilliance. If Indira does go to work for the dark side, aka Lorraine, it could be that snap of brilliance that we've been missing. I agree with her comments that she is a good character, but seems too deferential at times, so I hope so. So she's saying, or this person rather is saying, that much in the way Dom had a setback by dabbling in crime, it also allowed her to reach a higher gear, peak performance. She's thinking Indira working for Lorraine's going to do, and I think we're starting to see the start of that.
I can see that. I can almost see them balancing each other in a way where Indira pulls Lorraine a little bit closer to the light side.
Yeah.
And Lorraine gives Indira a little bit more self-respect and power and self-assertion.
Yeah, I can see that. Side note, Jordan says, long time listener, first time emailer. Love your show. Thank you very much. Always love hearing that.
Oh, cool.
All right, so that's catch us up to previous episodes. Now our new stuff. This is episode 8. Jamie H says, seeing Roy force Dot to come home with him, imprison her, and then come after her was a really tough watch. Props to the music department for using the most unsettling cover of Toxic I'd ever heard. Dot put up a good fight, but I think round 1 goes to Roy. And now that she knows where the bodies are buried literally, I'm going to need her to go ahead and stab Roy in the face repeatedly before she escapes. John Hamm, seriously scary in this episode.
Yeah.
To distract myself from the horrible abuse in this episode, I thought up an alternate history spin-off series in honor of fallen lawyer fixer Danish Graves. What if Dave Foley's Danish Graves met Mark Hamill's Arthur Pym from Fall of the House of Usher? Did you see that on Netflix this year? Mark Hamill plays... Like, what if the Joker became 70 years old, retired, became a lawyer? That's the lawyer character he plays in Fall of the House of Usher. It's something else. Because what if they met at the annual Lawyers for Rich Evil Assholes conference? They hit it off, decided to meet up regularly for drinks to vent about the ridiculous shit they have to bail their clients out of. Then, because I'm an unhinged degenerate shipper, hey, no shame in that. I'm an unhinged degenerate shipper too. They fall in love and run away together. After going on a globe-trotting adventure, they settle down in Thailand and open a small cafe on the beach, living out the rest of their days in peace, far away from psychotic rich assholes, supernatural beings, and trigger-happy corrupt sheriffs. I'm blanking on a name for this rom-com adventure. Any suggestions?
So he's saying Danish
Graves is going to fall in love with Mark Hamill's Arthur Pym from this other show, because he's the same way. The Ushers of this powerful billionaire family that had all these sex scandals, and he was always covering up for them, and wearing gloves and injecting needles and doing all this shit. And like these two fixers meet and fall in love. They bond over their shared common history.
I like that idea. If we find out that's how Danish lost his eye from his lover.
Mark Hamill took it out of him. Yeah.
Right.
For name, I was thinking Grimm Adventures, because you've got Graves and Pym. Grimm. It's like their celebrity couple name.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That could work.
Maybe that help, Jamie. If you get optioned, I want to cut. Me and Ron. Aaron and Aaron.
That's right.
Want to cut.
Want to cut. All right.
Andy, which you might know better as Dash Engine on Discord, on our community Discord, says, I'm predicting that at the end of the season there will be some interaction between Munch, debt, and all of humankind, and COVID. Something like he will judge the moral debts for mankind so great that he sends a plague upon the world, or he dies with no one to take on his accumulated sins, therefore punishment is distributed across all of humanity. There's got to be some reason Holly set the show only weeks before the pandemic. Though if Holly does go down that route, I'm not sure I'd find it very palatable given how many people suffered and died from COVID. That's the rub. Like everyone that died of COVID was some kind of divine judgment from the Sin Eater. But the stated reason Holly said is that there was like the COVID was like the last, like COVID was riding up the roller coaster. You hear the chain clinking. And COVID was right before we went over and full on into Crazy Town. And he said it deliberately there.
Right.
But I don't know. I could see like John Coffey in the Green Mile when he coughed up all the evil. I could see like
I was just thinking that.
No way. Aaron and Aaron are like we
I was thinking that because I was thinking
achieved full mental linkage, like in we were in the drift like in Pacific Rim.
That's right. I hope we don't end up like what happened. But yeah, when Coffee spits out all the evil into what's his name,
Wild Bill.
What if in a sense the Wild Bill, right? What if in a way, I almost said Crunch, Munch does that to Roy?
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Like, I'm going to give you all my sins. Yeah.
Yeah, and he says it, so we know it. Like, and I'm not saying it's going to be a supernatural thing, but he says something to suggest that that is what he's doing. And how it manifests, I don't know. But it could manifest itself in such a way, maybe Roy legitimately, people think he goes crazy and he gets put away the way Wild Bill was.
Oh, that's
or maybe
interesting.
Because
Roy's
himself.
Crazy religious fundy enough that he might believe it.
Totally. Yeah. He would believe it.
Yeah.
And that might be enough to kind of send him over. Like, that would be almost a cool way for him to go, where he doesn't die, but he has like a Wild Bill end. He goes mad. And he's put away.
I want to test Andy's this. So like but we're both of the thought that like if old Munch gets killed and like he falls to the ground and like black evil goes out of his mouth into the air, and then like in the post credits there's like news reports about a new disease somewhere in China. Like, we're not fans of that literal. Like,
no, I'm not. I don't like that.
It's a little Pat Robinson 700 Club saying AIDS is God's condemnation of homosexuality, right? I don't know if I can get, but it's an interesting idea, Andy.
Yeah.
Hectorino Salamanca says, not that old Jim is ever replaceable, but I honestly really enjoyed Aaron and Pete's coverage. You two were a great duo, so I'm looking forward to more. Pete Peppers.
Yeah, you guys did.
Pete's Peppers is Jim's COVID eater. Appreciate that, Hectorino. He put in something about, he thought there was something with the red ice scraper being a Fargo reference, because that was the tourniquet that Dot used to twist, the trooper fires.
Oh, interesting.
But then he sent, like 12 hours later, sent me an email saying, actually, I went back and rewatched that scene. It was a yellow ice scraper instead of red ice scraper.
Okay.
But
no, that doesn't work.
This is the opportunity for me to adjudicate me and Pete's faulty memories of season 1 of Fargo. So Fargo the movie, Steve Buscemi, shot in the mouth, wants to double cross Peter Stormare, buries the cash on the side of the road, and has a red ice scraper as his marker to get. Of course, he goes to Peter Stormare. Peter Stormare kills him, feeds him in a wood chipper. That cash is lost.
Right.
Season 1 of Fargo introduced Stravos, the supermarket king, who turns out started his fortune by finding a bag of $1 million on the side of the road in 1987, which lines up with the Fargo timeline exactly. And I'd forgotten that.
Right.
I felt like a big dumbass. But I kept on reading the wiki, and Lorne Malvo, with his biblical plagues, so torments Stravos that he thinks the only remedy is to take the briefcase, put $1 million in it, and he goes and reburies it at the same spot.
True.
So, yes, the Fargo money worked its way into Fargo, the TV show, but it's also still out there. As of, 2009?
Yes,
I forget when the first season of Fargo was set. 2012?
Right.
So it's still floating around. The same metaphorical, almost the same, it's not the same literal cash, but the same metaphoric cash. And that's how because I remembered, I'm like, oh shit, Pete might be right. Maybe they did find that. But I remember thinking it's still out there, and turns out we're both right, which is the best way friends can be right.
Yes, that's a good way. Yes, it is.
All right, finally, this is I got Ron prepped for this. I said we got a tome. We got a serious work feedback that a person sent in. John G from Seattle. This is a great email, and it's long, but it's very interesting. He says, it's been pretty clear for some time now that Holly's theme this season is about debt and what it means. And I want to talk about the 2011 anthropological masterwork by David Graeber entitled Debt, the First 5,000 Years. In this book, Graeber explores the foundations and concepts of debt across all human cultures and history. What is it? Where does it come from? And why does it have a moral component to it? Graeber shows us this idea around since Adam Smith that human societies existed in elaborate barter systems until they finally arrived at the concept of money as a complete myth. The way it's usually told, and is still told in bad economic textbooks today, is that gee whiz, barter sure was hard. People had to find this double coincidence of wants, where someone wanted something that someone had, and that other person also happened to want something the other person had, and a fair and equitable quantities to have equivalent value, and boy, oh boy, money came along and fixed all that trouble. It's like, how do you trade a pig for a chicken, and how do you trade meat for eggs, or a silver trinket for a bale of hay? Like, what the fuck? He says, as an anthropologist, Graeber is able to say that in all human societies, living and dead, that we've ever found or studied, no such barter system existed, and no evidence is provided that it ever existed. Instead, what actually happened was that ancient peoples were not like strangers in a modern city trying to extract value from another stranger. Rather, they were all intimately connected in a dense web of social obligations and shared history, and they operated within a system of credit and debit with each other. It wasn't debt written down on a ledger, but debt like, Susan borrowed my rake yesterday, and now Susan owes me something. That something didn't need to be another rake or an equivalent value of a rake because Susan wasn't a stranger. You're going to see Susan tomorrow and every other day, and there'd be a ton of this borrowing and helping and sharing. A sort of mental list gets created in everyone's head about every other person in the village. This vague accounting. It's not calculated, it's not mathematical, it's just everyone staying roughly equivalent to each other and sharing and helping. This actually means that you want to be in debt. Everyone being in just a little bit of debt to everyone else is what creates human society. It only becomes an issue if there's a layabout, someone who takes way more than they give, someone who's grossly and unquestionably out of proportion to the rest of the village in his vague accounting. This is so serious to village harmony that sometimes that person would just be killed. Because you can't have those people. They fuck up the system. So now we switch to our current world and its system. Debts are not social webs of mutual obligations holding the whole village together. Debts are now merely numbers on ledgers, amounts people owe. Debts are not tied to people who live together, but are obligations to strangers for intangibles. Debts are not even tied to people who can see or touch one another. They can be transferred to other people digitally across the globe. Debts are predatory instruments. Yet in this world, we still have this morality tied to it, the morality of paying one's debts. Graeber brings up an interesting transition in Mesopotamia that happened at between 2500 and 3000 BC. It's mostly a credit economy with currency reserved for the gods, apparently. But in this system, women were abundantly participating in public life. But by 1200 BC, after the introduction of big wars leading to coinage, the currency being created, which led to markets and then systems of public debt, human relations became commoditized, human beings became exchangeable, the concept of honor representing protection became men protecting his woman from being subjected to commodification, which led to a hard patriarchal system where women could no longer participate in public life. Anyway, the point I'm making is that I think Hawley is getting at more than just pointing out how rapacious this system is. It's not just the system is obviously sick and ooh, isn't that awful, but it's trying to explore these more alternative concepts of debt. There's a once very common practice in older societies of something like a debt jubilee, because once it got so out of whack and too few people held debt over so many, society couldn't function. So you just erase it and start over. Like every 25, 50 years or whatever, they would just be like, all debts are off. But I think more than that, Hawley's exploring how debt used to be what bound society together. Debt could be a force of good for different societies and systems. At the heart of debt, we have the concept of a promissory note, which is basically an IOU. I'm taking this loan. I promise to pay you back. Debt is a promise. We see Dot promise Scotty pancakes in episode 1 that Scotty never got. We see Dot stating that staring at the pancake box in the gas station, even while under assault. It's the first thing she does when she gets back home safe, make those pancakes for Scotty. When Dot's captured at Roy's, she's talking about how she promised her a kitten, and so she has to get back. In this tale, all the predation and revenge and billionaire debt companies profit off of suffering, all that kind of debt. Maybe there's another kind of debt that's more like love, and maybe that's what our story is trying to say.
Wow, there's a lot there.
That is a lot to think about. But
yeah,
it's interesting that when you see Indira and Lorraine and Dot start to work together, like that kind of like social obligation, like I'm scratching your back, you scratch. The idea that like you don't keep track of with your neighbors who did what for who. It's just kind of like, I thought there's a lot to this. It's funny. I talked to my sister who lives in a rural community where they do like farming and stuff. Is that they still do this kind of thing where it's like, John helped us bale the hay that one time, so we owe him when he goes on vacation. We got to look after his horses, and we got to get. It's like they're right. And then they also know when someone's getting a little out of whack, where it's like, this person's taking advantage of the give a little, get a little thing, and it's an interesting way to look at debt.
No, what I like about the letter is that it does lead you into this deeper discussion about debt and the history of debt. And when you enter that discussion and you think about the themes that Noah Hawley is introducing, ownership and debt, who owns what, who owes what. And I think it's really interesting. I don't know if they did this on purpose, but the role that women have in the show and the role that women have in the history of debt. You know, it wasn't until 1972 or whatever that women in this country could even get a credit card.
Absolutely.
So
right.
I think that's interesting. Women in the Bible used to be owned by men. I think that's interesting. Going back to his thing about Jubilee, you know, like in the Bible, it was 6 years. You could be an indentured servant for 6 years. In the Code of Hammurabi, in fact, it was Law 117. I was just making a video about this today. It was 3 years. You're dead. And this was around 1700 BCE. And so this idea of debt and a person's life being tied to it, and the role or the impact that it had on women in that time, because you could become an indentured servant to pay off your debt, and then you had that Jubilee. It'd be 6 years for Hebrews, 3 years for the Code of Hammurabi. But women could be indentured servant forever. It was only the man who could be set free after a certain amount of years. And if a man became indentured servant and then he married somebody and fell in love with that person and had a child with that person, and once he was freed, if he wanted to stay with his wife that he now had, he would have to give up his freedom and stay in indentured servant forever with his wife. So I think there's all of these issues of debt, the impact it has on women, the impact it has on family. And then when I think about the kind of themes that Noah Hawley is playing with this season, the role that women have, the power that Lorraine has, the debt that Dot supposedly owes to Roy, that she feels like she owes to her kids, the debt that maybe she feels like she owes to Gator in a sense. I like all those different ways, and this email really makes you think about the interest. Like, you can really dive deep into the themes of debt and ownership in this show.
That's why I always got to remember I need to cut Noah Hawley projects, or maybe I don't know. But I should cut his projects a little bit more slack in terms of its hard realism, because he tends to work more on the almost like the level of a fable or a parable. You know, it's like you'd sound really stupid if someone told you the story of the fox and the grapes and the sour grapes, and you're like, foxes don't talk. Like, well, no shit, dummy. Right. But you're missing the point of what's happening here. Now, you can make an argument about whether that kind of that kind of rule of fable or, you know, thematic righteousness, you should cut that slack on a show set in 2018 in you know, the upper Midwest about gangsters and all that. I don't know, but like it is having that kind of like more looser kind of thing allows him to do a lot more of this interpretive, like deeper stuff that maybe resonates on an emotional level more than it does on an intellectual one. And, you know, emotional arguments are at least as necessary as purely intellectual ones, because we need, as human beings, we're not purely intellectual or emotional. We really need that synthesis. The heart and the head got to be engaged for action to happen. So
yeah, I know for sure. I think that's one reason why this season is really been top notch in terms of the themes that it's exploring and the characters, and can't wait to see what happens in the next 2 episodes.
Well, thanks for that, John. Appreciate it. If you got something you want to say in the next 2 episodes of Fargo, please send it in to fargo@baldmove.com. We would love to hear from you. Ron, it's been a genuine pleasure talking Fargo.
Yeah, this has been great, man.
Where, if people want a little bit more, another Aaron in their life, tell us about what you're up to and where people can find you.
Yeah. So you can find me at blurredrunner.com. Kind of like Blade Runner, but Blurred Runner.
Can you tell us white folks what a blurred is?
A blurred is a black nerd.
I think the nerd flag has flown a few times in this episode. You've flown it a couple times.
For sure.
Yeah.
The name of my company is Blade Runner because I'm such a fan of the movie Blade Runner. So that's the name of like my media company. But Blurred Runner, I thought was a perk for my social media. And most of the stuff I'm doing now, I'm making a lot of TikTok videos mostly about like faith and religion and stuff like that in a very satirical way. But my podcast, Dungeons and Durags, season 1 is still up. And if people go to blurredrunner.com, they can connect to it. And if you want to hear Aaron share how much he knows about Black 70s sitcom nostalgia trivia, look for episode 3 of my Dungeons and Durags podcast.
There was allegations of rigging in that contest. I heard, there's some stop the count business that had to happen. We'll link that and link Ron's other links, and also our conversation we had back on Three Right Turns. I believe I can still find that Darmok at Tanagra, was it Darmok and Jalad at White Privilege?
At White Privilege.
Yeah, that's when Ron and I first met. So first got together on a podcast. So again, thank you so much for being another one of Jim's COVID eaters. And
I hope he feels better soon.
And I see you all the time on TikTok, holding down your beat, and it's really cool to see. And I hope we get to work together again in the future. But that's it for now.
Yeah, me too.
Check out Ron's stuff, everybody. We'll see you next week for episode 9. Until then, I'm Aaron, and this is...
I'm Aaron.
Aaron, we're out of here. See ya.